Duardin have always been masters of the land.
So the Hellsmiths of Hasha are a chaos faction in Age of Sigmar made of Duardin, who are engineers and demon smiths. They are essentially a group of Duardin from the Age of Myth, as was, who, when faced with the invasion of chaos, sold their souls for power, and hundreds of years later are making all sorts of horrible machines out of bits of demons and bits of the realms that they've churned up and are using to power their industry and their expansion.
We took inspiration of a lot of things that were made before, early on in the history of Warhammer Fantasy Battle. Stuff like the bull centaurs, the winged Taurus, the big hats, beards, mean-looking dwarves with fangs. All this was core to their identity, so we ended up keeping that, but also we wanted to give it a classic Age of Sigmar spin.
So I'm going to be honest, I've loved Chaos Dwarves, Chaos Duardin since I was a wee little tyke, so I was champing at the bit to do this one. We really had the time to kind of go through everything we've ever written about them, and even some things that hadn't been published that were just notes or just in people's head. So it was a matter of collecting all of that and then sort of sifting through it, thinking, what do we want to keep, what do we maybe not want to keep, what do we want to expand on. But we were having a lot of discussions this time about, maybe this could be that, maybe this could be part of their culture, and the way that you're designing this we could reflect in the writing, or vice versa. The slates that they write on, they don't have any paper, it's all stone. And we came up kind of collaboratively with that quite early on, which is, well, because of the dark magic that they're using, paper would just burn, right? So they have to use stone, they have to chisel it onto these things. And we thought that's quite a cool idea. So we were able to reflect that, and I think they took that forward into several other bits of the range as well. So that was cool. That was a very collaborative process.
Yes, we have different way of representing personal wealth in the range. So some of the dwarves have a lot of things around their belts, on their hats. They have more horns, they have more rings on their fingers, they have more intricate weapons, whereas some are maybe more in depth with some other ones. So we have those little trinkets that were intended to potentially represent ownership or debts that are owned to other dwarves or other part of their society, other guilds, for example. And then you have the very low strata of their society, which is represented by the hobgoblins, which probably have not much and probably don't live very happy lives.
Every faction, we want to give them really cool new battle traits, something that makes the army feel individual. So working on that was probably the key part to the whole design of it. And we went through quite a few iterations on that one, but we came up with desolating the terrain. So the army then marches across the battlefield and rips resources from it to power its engines. And that's a really cool, different mechanic that no other army has. And it kind of positions it as a anti-Sylvaneth army. So the Sylvaneth want to grow the battlefield, whereas the Hellsmith of Hashut want to destroy it. Demonic power points are what the faction uses to enhance its abilities and get more powerful, and it gains these by desolating terrain. So units in your army can, as I say, desolate terrain, and then for the rest of the battlefield you then gain demonic power points each turn for each desolated terrain feature on the battlefield. And so that it encourages you to push out, and so over the course of the battle you will desolate more terrain features, and each turn you'll get more demonic power points. So as the battle goes on, your army gets stronger and stronger.
For the bull centaurs themselves, we wanted to represent them very opulent. They have a lot of details, they have rare alcohol bottles on their belts, they have a lot of jewelry, they have a lot of very intricate and high quality weapons, because they are an important part of their society and they are rich. Whereas the anointed sentinels are more linked to the temple, and they are a bit more humble in the way they present, because they are on a higher state of being. They wear those very intricate helmets, which implies they have to cut their horns, which is a big thing for bull centaurs. They probably also have to shave, which is a big thing for all dwarves in general. And they have those ritualistic tattoos and weapons, and their role is to keep the temple safe, and they are a bit more on the religious side than the regular bull centaurs.
But the ziggurats are an interesting one, actually, because we got the colour schemes quite early on that weren't associated with anything yet. That was sort of at the same time we were developing the book. But the ziggurats themselves, in my mind, I don't know if I've said this anywhere else yet, but in my mind, each of them was supposed to represent a different stage in the kind of meta out-of-universe history of the Chaos Dwarves. So the main one is the Forge Anathema. We've kind of had that on maps of Akshi for a while now. That's the heavy metal purple scheme, and that is the modern Hellsmiths in all of their sort of demonic robot automaton making glory. You've got Urzorn, which is in Gur. That's the kind of original holy city of Hashut with the big hats and the ziggurats and the priests, and that is your classic Chaos Dwarves of sort of 5th edition. You've got Zarvixa, which is the oil rig in the middle of the ocean with their various demonic machines, and that's a nod to Dreadfleet, of all things, with the little mechanical kraken. It's a deep cut for anyone who remembers that. And then the last one is Muspelzar in Shimon, which is a horrible sort of industrial wasteland of mutation and smoke-belching factories, even more than the rest of the Chaos Duardan Empire. And that was a nod to the Legion of Asgore from Forge World, at least thematically, and how they're kind of more industrialised aesthetic that they went for with them. So that was another way of I wanted to kind of have a little bit of continuity for the people who had been following them through from the start and had been fans from the 80s, 90s odd time period.
Yeah, so when we were designing the spell lore for the Hellsmiths, we looked back at the old Chaos Dwarfs army book and we picked one of the spells. So Ashen Smog now harks back to the Ash Cloud spell for the Chaos Dwarves army book. So you can turn a piece of terrain obscuring and you can gain more demonic power points, which is really good because it desolates the terrain, which is really handy. So it kicks into your battle traits.
I think something that defines the Hellsmiths is that they have a supreme self-confidence in themselves, and this idea that we can play with the magical material, right? Nothing's bad going to happen to us. It'll happen to other people, but never to us. And even if things are going wrong around them, even if they are mutating and corrupting, they wouldn't necessarily see it that way. I think that they are definitely a chaos faction, but their interpretation of chaos and how they use it as a tool, or at least in their mind, use it as a tool, is very different to, say, even Skaven.
Yeah, they have their own world, their own culture, and all this was influenced by the design, figuring out how they write, how they present themselves, what they are about, and the style. Even though it's influenced by existing Eastern long-gone cultures, there's a strong part of mythology which set them really apart in terms of their unique place in the Age of Sigmar universe.
So I'm a big fan of the Bull Centaurs and the Anointed Sentinels. I think they both look cool. They really hark back to the original Chaos Dwarves, which I really did like as well. The Bull Centaurs are really good at charging, so they are your impact cavalry, whereas the Anointed Sentinels are more of a counter-attacking, so they work much better when they counter-charge your opponents. Once your opponents charge you, you then counter-charge into them and strike back before they do.
My favorite kit of the range is Uruk-Thor and its variant, the Demon Smith on Infernal Taurus. I just love the creature. I think it has a lot of great opportunities for painting, and it's also a very unique concept. That is also linking a lot to previous designs for the range, and also just general mythology. Like a living statue is really scary, especially when it's a giant Taurus with wings and burning eyes.
Abase yourself before us, and you may find a quick end. Our time has come. The realms belong to